Welcome, everybody. My name is Tommy Soares, and welcome to another Pathfinder program, part of the Purdue Institute of Inflammation, Immunology, and Infectious Disease. And today I have the pleasure of welcoming Claudia Medeiros from GeneDx. You're an analyst at GeneDx. Claudia, thank you so much for being part of our program and helping us to understand a little bit about what you do and what is your background and training. We are so excited to have you on, and thank you again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm so excited about this program. As I was telling you before, I wish I had this program when I was a student or a trainee. It's very exciting. I'm very happy to be here and happy to answer any questions about my career and my trajectory thus far.
Awesome, awesome. And that's exactly what we want to get into. Before we get into what you're doing now, though, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and your training? And I hear a bit of an accent too, and
Yes.
Moreiros is a Portuguese last name. So I will ask you what brought you to Indiana and all of that. So let's start with your background. How about
Awesome. Thank you for noticing the accent. I'm glad I haven't lost it.
that? Yeah.
Um, so I'm a molecular geneticist by training, and I started my undergraduate studies in Brazil, where I'm originally from. And during my undergraduate studies, I worked in environmental genetics in my lab for my undergraduate thesis. I really fell in love with the field of genetics as a whole, but I've always been interested in interdisciplinary research. So that's a common theme throughout my training. There was always biochemistry involved, cell biology, a little bit of understanding chemistry because I did genetic and chemical screens during my PhD training. And so, do you want me to jump in and how I ended up in the end, or can I keep going talking about my
Keep
training?
going. No, keep going. I love the story. I hope everybody else on the call is also enjoying it because it sounds like an awesome journey so far. But please go ahead.
Thank you. So during my undergraduate studies, I had the privilege to do exchange programs to US. And I really fell in love with the culture. So I had in my mind, I said that I need to return to this country. I want to do graduate school that's not only a great culture, but it's incredible science that is done there. And I want to be among the best. Maybe I'll become, if not the best, better than I already am. And that's the whole goal, is to always improve myself. So I ended up starting my master's degree at University of Connecticut, and in the lab of Dr. Pask, who now has returned to Australia. But at the time at UConn, I was researching genes involved in the sex determination pathway, which was very fascinating to understand how the gonads go to the female or they turn to the male pathway.
Yeah.
And then after that, I continue my research. I said, yeah, I really like it. I love research, but I still want to stay in US if possible. And I got accepted to the PhD program at Boston College, and I had the privilege to work with Dr. Hoffman. And in his lab, we used the power of his genetics, as everybody says, to study mammalian genes. And I did chemical and genetic screens to study this great family of enzymes called phosphodiesterases. And we screened for molecules that can regulate the modulators of the cyclic AMP pathway, and to ask our biological questions, because the mammalian family is so big. There's 11 PDEs, 11 phosphodiesterases, and over 100 isoforms. So to study in a mammalian system is much more difficult. So you introduce one by one in yeast, you ask your biological questions, and then you go back to a mammalian system. And so when I completed my PhD at Boston College, I found this incredible position at Baylor College of Medicine in Houston. And I moved to Houston to study, continue studying genetics, but looking into developing transgenic models to study rare disorders associated to mitochondrial dysfunction. And the reason we needed to develop these transgenic models is because the disorders in mice were lethal at birth. And we need to bypass that embryonic lethality in order to study the onset of disease and progression of the disease. So when I completed that training, and I digress a little bit because I completed the trade. I started in Houston, but the lab moved to Indiana, and that's how I ended up in Indianapolis.
Ah,
I moved with the lab, and it was a pleasant surprise. It was not on my radar to end up in Indianapolis in the Midwest, especially I think as an international student and trainee, you think about the coasts, right? Always the East and the West. So my goal was to move to California. That was the goal, from Houston to California. And when I moved here, I loved so much that research, and I said, okay, I'm going to continue doing it. And it was a great challenge to move a lab across the country, but I'm very happy that I got to do that, to get to experience that, because a lot of PIs don't even have that opportunity, and many PIs do have to move the labs eventually at one point in their careers, and so it was fascinating to see all the moving pieces. It was not easy. Don't want to sugarcoat it, but it was fascinating. And so I fell in love with Indianapolis. I really loved here. I love the Midwest, and I really wanted to stay. And I still felt that I wanted to stay in academia and I wanted to do research. So I looked for another postdoc position. I interviewed in several different labs, got different offer letters, and I ended up in the lab of Dr. Joseph Wallace at IUPUI in a biomedical engineering lab, doing translational research, which is the first time I started doing translational. Translational is is the next step from basic science to translational. And I was fascinated to work in a cross-functional team, a team of essentially of engineers from different fields in engineering, but essentially of engineers. So I learned a lot with them. And it was a very difficult decision to move away from academia after that incredible experience at IUPUI. And then I ended up at GeneDx.
wow. And so, my gosh, Claudia, what a journey, and it seems like not only a journey in scientific discovery, but also a personal journey in adopting a new culture, experiencing and embracing the new culture in so many instances, because Connecticut, Boston, and then Houston, and then Indiana, and then, like, oh my gosh, so the move must have been, in so many ways, part of your life and part of your experience. Even this new move, I know, maybe from a scientific perspective, and I will ask you about that, moving the equipment, setting up a new lab and so on, but also this moving from culture to culture to culture, because as you moved around the country, I'm hoping you might have noticed the differences between, Boston and Connecticut culture, from Houston, from Indiana, Midwest culture. And so let's talk a little bit about that. Was it very different working in these different environments, or because science is science, it's fairly much the same?
It is half and half. It is, in a way, it is the same because it's science. We have established certain protocols or certain ways of doing research, right? That we have to follow IACUC. We have to follow many different criteria to keep the standards of science and integrity and so on. But there's very different ways. different universities, even different departments within a university, they have different ways of training their graduate students, of the activities they have available for graduate students or postdocs vary greatly. And I try to maximize as much as possible these opportunities. So as a graduate student, I work closely with our graduate committee organizing the journal club in our department. As a postdoc, I was always involved with the postdoctoral association, whether if I had a title or not. I was involved and I was volunteering to help out with any activities involved with the group. Later on, continue as a postdoc, I felt the need to be involved in academic service. So I was an appointed member of different councils at IUSM during my time as a postdoc. And it was fascinating to learn the decision-making process of different aspects at the university and participating on voting or learning from all these leaders how they make the decisions, what is important to keep moving, to keep the quality of education. So I hope I answered a little bit of your question, because it's like a movie in my mind of the
Sure.
different things that I experienced, and I'm very grateful for these experiences.
Yeah, and it sounds like they were wonderful experiences, even though they were diverse and different. They varied, as you said. Um, you got to pick up different recipes from different chefs at the different restaurants that you worked at, to put it
Absolutely.
in plain and simple terms. Um, but so now tell me a little bit. Moving the lab from Houston to Indianapolis, that must have been stressful. It must have been a little bit. Was that had you ever built a new lab or reconstructed a lab before? You've done that before?
As a master's student, I was the first student in the lab. So I built that
Oh,
lab, I organized, I set up all
okay.
the equipment, all the glassware, everything. I trained a number of undergraduate students in the lab. So it was the setup for this
Okay.
move that I had it down.
Perfect. That's fantastic. Would you recommend it to somebody if they had that experience to do it, even though it was painful? Because I'm sure you had to learn and figure things out as you went along.
This is a great question, because when my former boss, my former PI, Dr. Graham, made the offer, look, I am moving the lab to, I was not expecting, it did not come through my mind that this was going to happen. And he told me, I'm moving the lab. I got this offer and I'm moving to Indiana and I would like you to move with the lab. Would you like to move it? This is the offer. And I was in shock. And when I talked to some of my friends, it was really interesting to see some of them who, especially the ones who experienced, it was like a 50-50. Don't do it or do it. I can tell you, I mean, it was not easy. Of course, if I could uh, adjust some other things looking back, I would make some changes. But where I am in my career, I think it was important for me to have that experience. Um, People will give different answers for this experience because it really slowed down the research a lot. So you have to think about that. Um, every university, although we do follow similar protocols, but some universities are more strict than others for various reasons. And so we do have to keep the animals in quarantine for a certain amount of time. We do have to create all of our animal protocols for approval at that institution, and
Yep.
so on and so forth, and have to retrain, because yes, I was training many things at Baylor College of Medicine, especially at animal work training, but IUSM require other things, and you have to follow their guidelines, right? Because you're now
Sure.
employee of that other institution. And I think, in my opinion, most of the people that I remember telling me don't do it, it was because of it's slowed down a little bit. For others, it was a great experience, and they get to keep doing the research they love. Um, and so they said, yes, do it, because it was a no-brainer. They knew how much I loved that research. It was very difficult for me to part ways, but it was the right time to complete that training and move on to the next step in my career.
That's
So
awesome.
I can't tell you what is right or wrong. For me, it worked.
For you, it worked, and it prepared you. Really, you never know when you're going to need that type of preparation of setting up a new lab or moving a lab or figuring out how to go and recommend to somebody to do it if they need to do it. The very valuable. And Claudia, I don't want to focus too much on this, but it seemed to me that when you were describing some of your postdoctoral experience, it seemed to me that you wanted to make a point of saying that you participated in the postdoc association, and it seemed like you were involved throughout your graduate school and postdoc in these different activities. And just for the grad students and postdocs that are listening to this program, what do you recommend to them? Was that worthwhile, that involvement? Even if you didn't have a position in the postdoc association, you still were part of it. And what did you gain from that?
Absolutely. You keep, it was super, super important for my development as a scientist, but also as a person, and as a leader. You don't need to have a title to be a leader, and to be a good mentor to the undergraduates or graduate students in the lab. So these were very important. It helped me to improve my communication skills, my organizational skills, my time management, to reach out to other scientists, to get exposed to other fields of science, to talk science in more lay language terms, because I'm talking to experts from other fields, but the vocabulary vary, right? And
Yes.
so I highly recommend graduate students and postdocs to get involved as soon as possible, with or without a title on your CV.
I
I
do
think it's
too. I think that's great. I think that's great advice. And it's so important, isn't it? I mean, because otherwise, the experience that you have is totally different than if you don't get involved, if you don't take some of these extra responsibilities or open the window to see what's outside the lab, too. Claudia, I am so curious about this role as analyst for GeneDx. What do you do? I love that tell us about the company. The company is not located in Indianapolis, but you have this position and you work remotely from Indianapolis for this company, which is located where?
It's located in Gaithersburg, Maryland.
Okay.
GeneDx. It's a genetic testing company. It's one of the best in the field. And to me, speaking of my career trajectory, it was a natural next step to get involved in clinical research. And moving, doing this transition that I like to call transition from academia to industry, I got exposed to so many different fields, and I talked to so many brilliant scientists around the country through interviews or reaching out to have informational interviews to know more about what they do in industry and if it is worth to transition, right? My whole career was in academia. So suddenly now I have not suddenly, I put a lot of thought into it because I really love time I was in academia, but it was the right time to make that transition for myself. And a common company that many of my colleagues and peers in the genetics fields told me about was GeneDx. It was positive reviews. They talked about how incredible there was work and life, how incredibly satisfied the employees were with the work and life balance, and how great they are in the field of clinical genetics. And I read about them. I went to their website. I learned more what they're doing, and I learned about this position, which when I was in academia, I had no clue that exists. It's called review analyst. So basically what we do, we interpret the clinical DNA specimen to classify the variants that we find in this patient sample. Are they pathogenic? Are they benign? Or due to lack of evidence or conflicting evidence, we cannot make a prediction what they're doing. And so in this way, we can help the patients to make a more informative decision about their health or change their treatment course. So I think it's a direct impact. We see it directly impacting of our work, because at the end of the day, we're looking at variants, but it belongs to a patient. It belongs to someone, and we want to make the best data analysis and the most correct and efficient data analysis to give an answer to that patient.
Sure. And so, Claudia, do you focus on particular disease types? Is this mainly for cancer diagnoses, from biopsies that you obtain? Were they, tissue or liquid biopsies from the patients, or are there different
This is
diagnoses that you provide?
There are different tests, right? So this is a job for the primary analyst. They do the bulk of the work, I would say. I mean, in my opinion, they do a lot of incredible work. They get the different samples, blood samples or tissue samples. They have different tests, and like next-gen sequencing, exome, targeted testing. There's a variety of tests.
Okay.
And in my department, in the team that I am, we have different programs. We have the exome program, we have rare disorders, we have neuro disorders, we have cardio disorders. So right now I'm starting my training on the cardio program. So all the variants that affect the heart and the cardio system.
So neat, so neat. My gosh. So there must be a big data analysis, computational science side of
Yes.
things as well, right?
Yes.
What is the data that you focus on? Do you just focus on the next gen sequencing, the genomic, genetic sequencing data, bioinformatics, or how does that work?
Right now, I am getting trained on the next gen sequencing, but
Okay.
eventually we have cross training on other programs. So I'll be working on exome, potentially on
Okay.
mitochondrial because of my training on mitochondrial
Oh,
disease as a
right.
postdoc. Yeah, I'm at the initial stages of my career at GeneDx, just
So
fascinating and exciting.
awesome. That is so neat, and so excited for you, because it does sound like a great fit for your career trajectory, right? Tell
Yes,
us,
thank you.
tell us, tell us a little bit about, do you recall what made you make the switch? What made you take the leap and say, yes, now I'm ready, or this really did it for me? And was it pay? Was it you've had enough? Was it you wanted more of that? What was it that really tipped the scales over for you?
Oh my goodness, this is a great question. I think it was a combination of a little bit of the things that you already mentioned. And I think the pandemic really made us to reassess, at least made me reassess my goals and think about it carefully, work-life imbalance, think about what next on my career. Do I want to continue doing basic science and translation, or do I want to move away and try something new? And I think this reassessment of my goals made me think carefully on everything that I wanted to do. And then I reset the goals, and then I did a transition. I'm not sure if I'm answering, but it's not an easy answer, because it was not a spread of the moment, right? I did two postdocs.
Yeah.
um, I experienced different fields of research. And I think that's also one of the things. I think I had such a diverse research experience that I thought that it would be very difficult for me to set up a lab and have a research line instead of multiple research lines. And you probably know way better than me, when you're starting, you really need to focus to X number of biological questions until you can expand a little bit more your lab and increase your collaborations and all of that. So I think that it took me a long time. It was not an easy decision, but I'm glad I made the decision. I think it was a good decision. I do believe it was. I do believe that was the right decision, and I'm very happy I made the decision. But it was not
Yes.
easy. It was not easy to talk to my mentor, who is amazing, and to let
Yes.
him know I think I'm moving to industry. It was not easy. I was very honest. He put a lot of training in me. He mentored me a lot. So I think it kind of own him, to let him know, look, as much as I love teaching, researching, academia, mentoring, I think it's time to move to industry. And I think I'll be a better fit in the industry based on my interests. I get
I
exposed to different research every day, every day.
but I admire that about you, Claudia, because it is such an
Thank you.
important uh, thing to say. Um, you know, I don't know, maybe people have different standards, but I find that when you are honest, even though sometimes it might hurt more because it's the truth, and the truth sometimes is hurtful, people respect you for being honest and for being truthful and for being open with them. They might not like your decision, they might be disappointed with your decision, but they will continue to respect you because you were forthright about it. And if anything, what science teaches us is to uncover the truth. And
Absolutely.
if we cannot be truthful with ourselves, then what type of scientists are we? How can we really say that we communicate clearly if we really don't, and we have other underlying things, right? So very important. I really admire that that you said that.
Thank
Um,
you.
and I admire also the level of success that you have achieved in your progress. As you said, oh, you should really focus on this particular area if you want to succeed, if you want to be in science, the expert of that one particular area. But it seems to me that you have picked up different areas as you've moved along, and you're still being successful, and that's still a good thing because you have so many tools on your belt, your molecular belt, and you're learning new tools now on next gen sequencing. How exciting! And like, you just continue to grow. Tell us a little bit about what's the formula to succeed with changes, with so many different chefs to work with, so many PIs to work with.
I think it's really important. You make so many great questions. I think it's really important to, you know, set your expectations and your goals and go for it, accomplish them. Choose something you're passionate about. And that's the biggest thing for me. I'm very passionate about science. I go where the science that drives me, that makes my eyes, you know, twinkle or something, makes me smile. I'll go after them. That's why I moved so many times. Like I read the topic. I said, oh, this is really cool. I think I will be able to make some contributions to that field, even if small ones, but I want to be a part of that. And so I think it's really important to be very passionate. Choose something you're passionate about. Stay focused. You will get there eventually. Be patient, uh, driven, right? Because it's important to, when you're driven, um, you have the initiative to seek the knowledge, to learn, to improve yourself, to continue growing. And I think this is really important. And that's why I was able to work with so many different chefs and learn so many different recipes along the way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it seems like you haven't burned bridges with these previous PIs. You speak about them still very caringly, and things are still in good, and that says a lot about you,
I I hope I have not. I mean, I'm not gonna say we all been students and trainees, or many of us have here.
Yes.
I will have to say that I've been lucky. Most of my experiences have been positive, most of them, so I'm lucky for that. But it wasn't easy, and it was not always the best thing. And and again, if it's not working for you, if you think you already contributed enough, you reassess your goals, you reset the button, you have a conversation. Every PI that I worked with, I had a conversation, and it's like, it's not, sometimes, like you said, it's not easy, but you need to make an executive decision about your career and about your interests, and you go for it. So I hope I have not burned any bridges. It's not all the decisions that I've made is about my career, because I'm the manager of my career, so I need to make those decisions for myself. Nobody else can make those decisions, right?
That's right.
And so it was nothing, it was not a reflection on them. It was more of my own interest, and I had to move on. But I'm not going to say that was easy. It was always the best thing, but I'm very lucky. Most of my experience have been very positive.
Fantastic. I'm so glad to hear that. And again, I think, much of that can be attributed to you and your personality and your your sense of responsibility and drive, as I can see too. Um, you said you are the manager of your own career. I really like that because I think it's so important for all of us to realize that there's no bad decision really that you can make in choosing career options, because you can always switch, you can always change, you can always go from Houston to Indiana or Boston and Houston and Connecticut or whatever. But
Absolutely.
now you're working remotely though. And so
I
when
am.
you like, how do you manage that? And more importantly, how do you stay accountable to the company? How do they check in on you and make sure you're accountable for the work you're doing? Is it results driven, or do you meet frequently with the team over Zoom like this, and or do you travel there? What does that look like in terms of managing your remote work? Because I know there's a lot of people that are going to be watching this and are going to say, oh, I could be a remote analyst too. How do I do that? Right?
Dr. Soares, or a great point. Again, going back to my training, I think some of the aspects that I learned, not only through the research, but through the academic service that I did during my undergraduate and postdoctoral training, um, it really sharpened some of the characteristics that are really important to work remotely for me. So it is my personal opinion and how I'm doing right now. So for me, it was really important to be efficient. I very often have dates to accomplish my experiments. I always troubleshoot really fast. I love troubleshooting. It was for me like I'm doing some kind of, detective work. And I enjoyed that. I know a lot of people don't like it because it's not easy, but for me, it worked really well. It was always important to pace myself, and to have this set of a level of organization and time management that I am accountable for. I don't need micromanagement. I know what my job is. I know what I have to do. And if I don't, I will ask for clarification. What are the expectations for my research, for my current job? So I'm always in touch with, back then with my mentors, but now with my supervisors. I love work at GeneDx. I don't have micromanagers. This position is a PhD level position, so all of the review analysts are PhDs, and many of them went through postdoc training as well. I do have different supervisors depending on what am I doing on where I am on my training and what program I'm joining. I have my main supervisor who I meet every 2 weeks just to touch bases, see how things are doing, how I'm progressing on the work, if I have any questions, if I need to clarify anything. Feedback on my work is always important and welcome, right? Because I want to keep doing a good job and contributing to my company.
Yeah.
It's not about what we can get from our employers or mentors, or what we can also bring it to the table.
Yes.
And stay motivated, and continue to learn and ask questions when you don't know something. One thing that is fascinating me about industry, about this position, is the level of communication skills and how much we use our communication, whether it's in oral communication or written. We have to be clear, we have to be concise. We work on cross-functional teams. Like I said, they are experts in their fields. We have different vocabulary, so we have to communicate in a way that, yes, there's scientific language, but also lay language, and
Yeah.
find that balance, and always continuously communicating well to move forward with the project, whether it's answering a research question, or analyzing the data to give an answer to the patient. We have a goal, a clear vision for the company, right? It's patient centric, and we need to work really well in groups. I think for me, even though I am working remotely, I am working on teams, and we meet once a week as teams. I meet with my trainers, if not every day, but I talk to them because I need to ask questions about certain parts of my training to make sure I am understanding and I'm moving forward and I'm
Yeah.
progressing with my training. And so it's remote, but it doesn't feel like it is remote. And I am well, at least I like to believe I'm a people's person. I'm in the extrovert spectrum, but it's been fascinating to work remotely. I'm learning so much, and I'm so, once you're organized, you manage your time well, you are motivated, you will get the work done. You know what you have to do. Like I said, so keep doing it. And if you don't know, ask questions to make sure you do your job well. When you do, you achieve your targets, deadlines, and all of that. There's many deadlines in the industry, more so than academia, and is a fast pace. So if you're organized, if you manage your time well, if you're organized, you become efficient, and you are on top of everything, even though you're working remotely.
So, but you have to have that work ethic. You need
Yes,
to really set yourself
absolutely.
and keep yourself accountable, making sure that you're doing it. I'm sure your team doesn't necessarily care. It, when you send the information, but that you send the information too, right? Or do they expect you? Well, I mean, I would think that they do expect you to be available on Teams whenever they have a question of you too, right?
Yes, we need to maintain that flexibility. Like I said, it's a teamwork. You do your work, but your work is also part of the team, and the team is moving forward with that project. It's small pieces of the project to the bigger picture. And
Yeah,
so there are dates for some are more priority than others. And then again, you learn this in graduate school, you learn this as a postdoc. Just keep striving to be better at it.
yeah,
And if you're not sure if there's a deadline, if it's not clear for you, clarify that with your team, with your supervisor, to make sure you, uh, at the end of that deadline, you meet that deadline.
yeah. And Claudia, tell me something. Do you have to travel to Maryland every once in a while? Are you like, is that part of the job? They ask you to go there, or is that not really required because you're mainly analyzing data?
It's not required. We're hoping that post-pandemic we're able to have again it is famous that I was told they used to have a picnic once a year or something, and I hope we get that back so I can meet my team in person and I meet everyone in person. That'll be awesome. But no, I'm not required. I work from home 100%. They sent me the laptop, the screen, so I work from home.
Yeah,
If I needed to work at another location remotely, just talk to my supervisor for approval. So far, they've been great. They've been very flexible, and I can bring my computer to work remotely at another location as long as I'm working with the work computer,
yes,
and accessing the company's VPN and all of that.
sure, sure. That's tremendous. That's really good. And again, I think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to watch this interview and are going to say, remote work for scientists like this, how interesting. I think I could start looking around. But there must be things that you're going to miss from academia. Are there things that you can think of already that you're like, oh, I really miss being able to do that you could tell us?
Of course, there are things that I miss in academia. I mentioned before the academic service. I had the opportunity and privilege to work in the Women's Council, the Diversity Council at IUSM. It was great. As a graduate student, I taught for many years and have that teaching a lab course was always fun to me. Of
Yes.
course, I missed that, and I was. I don't know if I should say, but doing interview process, different companies they ask many things, and some of the questions are similar. And one of them, if I would miss that and how to do it, I said, well, I know I'm gonna miss, but I hope I can adjust it quite well. And if anything, maybe I can go shadow someone in a lab and shake it out of my system somehow by just
Yeah.
watching someone doing it. But yes, there are aspects in academia that I would definitely miss as part of me, but I'll bring those experiences with me, and I use them in my advantage, right? I remember contributing to students' improvement and growth and where they went next, their career. You continue using that mentoring aspect when you go to industry. You will teach other colleagues certain parts of your training. You help them along the way. So that part will continue, but But I guess the experiment itself, that I'll miss that, and the academic service, I'll miss that as well. Yes, for sure.
Totally, totally. We've also heard from previous industry scientists through the Pathfinder program that they would miss seminar series, being able to attend different seminars at different.
We attend seminars at
You
GeneDx.
do? Oh,
Yes.
awesome,
Yes,
awesome.
we also take courses. We are required to take a minimum of 12 credits a year. So we take online
Wow,
courses of different aspects in genetics or other things. And we do
neat.
attend seminars. Not
That's,
maybe not as often as in academia, but we do attend
yeah,
seminars.
but how neat. So it sounds like a great blend to continue to uh, get you to grow and get you to learn new things. That's awesome. I wanted to ask you about that because it seems like there is plenty of opportunity in industry to continue to explore your career options to and grow into something new. We've seen and we've heard from other scientists that, oh, I was more interested in the business part of things, and so that's where I went, or I was more interested in the regulatory, and that's how it happened. What does it look like in GeneDx for you?
Yes, it's very much similar. I know colleagues that thought they wanted to be genetic counselors, and they realized, no, I wanted to be an analyst. And there's something. This is one of many aspects in industry that I would miss if I were to leave industry, is this opportunity to growth and to change and to evolve within the company and within the career in industries, the quote unquote, if I, for lack of a better word, the endless opportunities to grow and evolve. And
Yes.
there's so many opportunities in academia, and the potential to growth is really appealing to me.
And I think it's appealing for many scientists. There's always that road as you're going through your PhD and your grad studies, your postdocs. I mean, even as you were going through your two postdocs, it must have been always something, right? Because it's industry is always something that is an option to go towards, and it brings a lot of curiosity for us that are in the schooling system to be trained to be scientists and to be trained to think critically and ask the right questions, right? um,
Yes,
it is so wonderful to get your perspective really on this,
thank you.
because it sounds like you are living or have lived so many different journeys in this one journey, or so many different places, and it's brought you here, and now you are a model for us for this type of new type of work environment. And
Thank
I know
you.
COVID has changed things, and
Absolutely.
it probably opened this opportunity. But this is interesting. I have a lot of questions regarding, do you pay taxes in Maryland or do you pay taxes in India? But we don't need to talk about that.
Okay.
But but
And I'm
it's
constantly doing science. I'm reading, if not more than in academia, I'm reading a lot of papers every day. And the critical thinking is there,
yeah,
right? You're asking the questions because you analyzing data constantly every day. It's not just one sample. It's more than one case at a time. And
yeah,
so yes, that's just the so-called transferable skills. They are there, and take advantage
yeah.
and use them and keep improving yourself.
And so does that mean that you are scouring the literature also to help you in your current analyses that you do?
Yes,
You see certain SNPs show up and you're like, oh, okay, what does that mean? What if they're co-segregating, if they're coming together, or whatever it might be,
e-
right? Um,
exactly,
so
exactly. If
interesting.
if it affects the function of the gene, right? What is it be affected at the protein level? And
Sure. If it's
um,
known, right? If the
exactly, if
mechanism
it's
is
been reported
known,
before, exactly.
right?
It's a loss of function, is a gain of function, and
Yeah,
all of
yeah,
that.
absolutely. And that means that you need to be really up to date with it all.
Yes.
And it's a field, Claudia, that is changing. And I wouldn't say changing, I should say evolving, as it should evolve. And it's evolving because of people like you that are giving it, the strength to evolve it and bring it to people's lives and help them change lives. I hope, I hope you see that is the true impact that you are
Thank you.
having. And it's so good to be able to talk to you and get that perspective. What was the best piece of advice that you ever got from somebody? Do you remember?
Oh my gosh. And again, I've been lucky enough in this lifetime to be surrounded by incredible people and mentors and peers. And but I will say for the purpose of the Pathfinder program, I think that when I was in my starting my second year in my PhD, we went to a career seminar, and someone asked something about networking. This is a big word. Everybody said you have to network, you have to network. And the guest speaker at the time said something that resonated with me until now, and will always. I will carry that with me. She said, this is look around. This is your primary network, is the foundation of the network, your peers, the students in the program. And I carried that with me. So because we are in this quote unquote on the same boat, right? We're learning and we see each other's progress. We talk about science, things sometimes we don't understand or we don't want to ask other people. We ask each other first, and we take the same exams pretty much, and we see who did better or not, and things like that.
Yes.
They see my first presentation as a PhD student until my last presentation defending my PhD. So they see my progress. So very much is the same for postdoc too. You That's your prime, also part of your primary network. In fact, my first postdoc, one of my colleagues in my PhD sent it to me, the ad, because they knew how much I love mitochondria and I wanted to do mitochondria research as the next phase of my career.
Yes.
And so the same thing when I start looking for clinical research positions, there was my colleagues and friends really as a postdoc. We were postdocs back then at Baylor, and they told me, look, these are the companies, and they all rave about GeneDx. And so keep keep networking. Of course, we always want to uh, look better in the eyes of the professors and more successful people, directors, and all of that. But your primary network will take you really far. I talked to many of my peers that moved directly from PhD to industry, and they were kind enough to set half hour, an hour, or more of their time to talk to me about what they're doing and why they really enjoy industry, if they missed all these questions that we have that we're not sure. And so make sure that you take a good look and keep the good ones along the way, because that's your primary network, and from that you will expand and you meet people through them that will be
Yes.
also a very cause a very positive impact in your career as well.
I like that very much. And in full transparency, you and I met through our LinkedIn network. And
Yes.
I think it's such a great piece of advice that it helps to meet people. I reached out. It's scientists talking to scientists, is people connecting. Who do you know? Who can I talk to? What should I learn from that or not? Such an important piece of advice to continue to network, continue to talk to people because we're all on the same boat, as you said. I
Yes.
heard a very interesting piece of statistic that 90% of all the scientists that have ever existed in humanity, in the story of humanity, 90% are alive today. And so that means that the network is pretty small if you really think
Yes.
about it. Think about
Yes.
that. And so it really helps us to continue to network and meet each other and learn from what each other has learned and learn from each other's experiences and guidance. And Dr. Claudia Medeiros, thank you so much for
Thank you,
speaking to
Dr.
us
Soares.
today. It's such a pleasure. We want to be able to catch up with you also at another time and see how it's going. I hope
Perfect.
we can continue to stay in touch with you.
For sure. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I enjoyed very much. It's a pleasure to participate. Like I said, I wish there was a program like that when I was a student or trainee. So please reach out if someone wants to ask, a student or a postdoc who is planning on transition. If they want to ask any questions, please share my email with them. It's okay, and I hope I will answer their questions to the best of my ability.
Well, you did today to answer my questions fabulously. And so thank you so much for taking time to talk with us today. And thank you, everybody, again for joining us. And we'll be in touch for the next one. Bye
Thank you. Bye
bye.
bye.